So this is my latest crop of wall hearts. So I figure, you know, your house needs jewelry just like you do as a human, and I like making things a little bit bigger, so although I could make these brooch size or pendant size, and sometimes I do, I like making them a little bit bigger so they can be hung on the wall, but not too big so they can just kind of tuck wherever. Anyway, this is my latest one, and I've always been really fascinated with the heart shape. I like it artistically. I like the roundness and the pointedness, and then it can go fat or skinny or curved or whatever. So it's a fun shape for me to play with. But I like the symbolism too, you know, having our hearts adorned, having our hearts made up of lots of little pieces that create something beautiful out of all the little bits and pieces of our lives. You know, those are fun little metaphors for me to play with, and we just know how important it is for our hearts to be functioning and beautiful. So anyway, I like making hearts. So I thought I'd show you just a couple things on each one of these. Because they're fun. So this base is epoxy clay, and I haven't finished the backs yet, but many of them have like a little foil core to just sort of fill it up a bit more, so I don't have to use as much epoxy. You'll notice some of them are more flat, but the rounded ones I've used that foil. So often what I do is whenever I'm demonstrating something on a polymer clay like this one or this one, if I've finished something and it's reasonable, but I'm not sure what to do with it yet, then I just put it in my bucket for works in progress, and then I can pull it out later, like now, to incorporate it into something else, right? So I had this leaf lying around, and I thought, let's use that. And here's some of the other fun things that are in this. First, the obvious, these delicious little things. Those are a strand of African trade beads. So usually those, from what I remember, these are old beads that were made in Venice, glass beads obviously, and these all had a white core, but you can see that it's all irregular and stuff, so these are quite old. I just love them. So I took the strand apart and I put them into little colors, and then I just thought this was so terrific. So I started off with this and wanted to use these wonderful pearls, and I wanted to accent them with this little bright neon pink for no reason at all. And then this is the little head of a cone shell. So typically I live in Maui, and so you can find cone shells on the beach from time to time, and a lot of times that little top cracks off just because of the nature of the shell and gets tumbled around. And if there's a hole in it, which there often is, if the shell is on the beach because the occupant got eaten, and usually that hole was drilled in the top by whatever sea creature is doing that sort of thing, then you have a hole in it, which in Hawaiian is a puka. A puka means hole, and that becomes a puka shell. So that's what this is. But I just love this one, and I made like a little vortex around it just to kind of give that whole swirly thing there. And the rest of this is just some seed beads and some texture, which I thought was fun. This, just because I felt like it, this sort of ended abruptly, and I thought I wanted to put something to finish that up there. So I'll add a little bit more clay on the back and a hanger, and it'll be ready to go. All right, so this one is another one of those rounded with the foil core, and I wanted to highlight these, mostly this amazing pearl. I don't know where I got it, but I've just had it kicking around in my stash of goodies for a while, and I thought, oh, let's go ahead and make this the center of attention. And then I've had some other little really fun shaped pearls to go with it. And then, you know, a keshi type pearl here and just another little bubbly pearl. And to this, I have added some carved shell flowers, some glass marini by an artist in the Northwest that I really love. And then this is a ruby, and these are rubies. So, you know, different stuff from my stash. These are a bunch of tiny little mother of pearl shell bits. I just love them. And look at how wonderful that looks all put on this black epoxy sculpt. So by the way, if you go to the description, you'll find a link to my site. I carry these little teeny shell bits. I have marini in there. I've got bags of pearls, although they're not as great as this one. You know, and of course the epoxy clay. So if you like to create your own stuff, there's a lot of the supplies that I use on my shop in case you want to do that as well. Now this is something fun that I picked up in Japan. I was in in Kyoto area, and my friends brought me to this place that specialized in making these round cakes, and I can't remember now. It's almost on the top of my head of what they're called. Baumkuchen cakes, and they're made on a hot cylinder and wrapped around and around, so it ends up like being like a tree trunk kind of a look. Anyway, this was a factory that made all of that, but it also had like a visitor center, which you could go have tea and have some of the cakes. And the interior was so interesting of this particular room where you could have your tea and cakes, because it was sort of whitewashed with like a plaster kind of finish, but they had used all the support beams were raw wood, or wood that had been charred, so that it used the fire to kind of char the outside for a really interesting effect. And then all kinds of little bits and pieces of charred wood were then embedded into the wall in like these clusters that got really dense in one area and then spread out. So it was almost like these undulating murmurations of charred wood. And I've always loved that look. So now what I do to mimic that kind of feel is whenever I'm using head pins, which is what these are, gold plated head pins, ball tips, I trim them little when I'm putting them in my clay here, but I have all the little ends. And since they're all gold plated, I don't throw those away, obviously, but I cut them all up, and sometimes I use them for decor in a piece like this. So I think that one turned out pretty good, don't you? All right, let's look at this one next. So this is another thing that, as I'm talking right here, I have on my site. Depends on when you're watching this, but these are little shell inlaid fish. So they've got the spiny oyster and the mother of pearl. These are done by a family in the Philippines that have been working with shells for decades, and they're just delightful. So I carry these are beads, so but I like them in my mosaics. But anyway, and then I just had a bunch of interesting little ceramic beads, as well as some more of those African trade beads. This is an operculum. Operculum is like the trapdoor that some mollusks make. So when it's hiding inside of its little shell, it'll pull its trapdoor shut, which is also made out of shell. And each mollusk has its own shape. Some of them are very rounded, some of them are very smooth. This one happens to be delightful. And this I found in, actually I'm not sure where I got this one. I know I got some like it in Australia, but I might have picked that one up somewhere else. But anyway, I thought that would be instantly kind of connoting this whole oceany vibe. Random pebble and fun little agate here. All kinds of little pieces of glass. So these are glass stringers. So I have some friends that are lamp workers, and when they get to the end of a rod of glass and they're using it to heat and add and make their beads, they have little bits left over, and I've bought them from my pals, and then I nip them with my little pliers, and I end up with all these fun little glass bits that can be added to the mix. So the rest of it is just some glass beads and some other tourmalines and things that I had lying around. This one is on a flexible cable because it was once part of a necklace, and I just thought that'd be fun there. So definitely the sort of ocean vibe going on with that one. All right, so let's look at this one. This is the biggest one, and it does not have a core. As you can tell, it's flat because I had this piece here that I was demonstrating. So I made this as a little demo on one of my live chats, and then I was on a different live chat. I was showing how you can just add all kinds of beads around it and take something that you've made and make it into something else. So it was half done, and I thought, well, that'd be fun. I can just finish up this whole butterfly in the meadow look, and I just added, enameled metal leaf pendants that I had, some porcelain beads, some more of that Marini glass, which I just love, glass dagger beads. This is smalty, which is a traditional mosaic material. If you were doing traditional mosaic, smalty is these little bits of glass that are chipped and nipped into little pieces to create your micro mosaic. I just have chunks of them around, and I like adding them to make a really fun look. I just love how that glass catches the light. It's really fun. And then, of course, just seed beads. And these were a find at a thrift store. There was just some big necklace, some funky weird thing, but it had, I love these irregular beads. I think sometimes these are coming out of India or Pakistan, and they're just, I love them because they're all different shapes, and they're just crazy, and they add a lot of really interesting visual. So I actually used, most of these are with black epoxy clay. This one is white, so that I can add texture and powder. I use pan pastel, and there'll be a link to my Amazon influencer page where you can find things like the pan pastel that I use. And again, sprinkled in just a bit of pearl and stuff to make it have a feel of, just this butterfly in the meadow kind of thing. So I thought that turned out kind of fun. All right, let's look at the purple one. I had all of these lovely little yellow agates. They're leaf beads, but they're gorgeous little agate banding in there, so they're really pretty. And I love pairing yellow and purple because they're complementary colors, so that always looks good. I had this weird little gold-plated something from some broken locket, so I thought, let's make that the centerpiece. This is a carved amethyst flower. This is a beautiful stone bead. The stone name I forget. A porcelain bead, just glass stuff. These are little slices of glass called filletti. They're another traditional mosaic for micro mosaic components. So it's glass. It's pulled into these little leaf-shaped, almost like a piece of pasta, and then nipped with clippers to make smaller bits that you can then embed into, usually grouting and whatever the traditional thing would be. I'm, again, using epoxy clay because that's what I like. And then some weird bead cappy kind of things that I had floating around, which I thought just made the whole thing look good, don't you? And again, those little ball-tipped head pins are really fun for giving accents and finishing off a bead so it looks completed. And then I saved the most crazy one for last because I knew you were curious about this one. All right, so this one evolved in a kind of a neat way. I found this little necklace thing somewhere, bracelet thing somewhere. I don't know. I know it's silver, and someone really cool made it because it's just absolutely beautiful. And I don't know where I got it or who made it. And I don't know if I found it somewhere. Somebody... I bought it from somebody. I just don't know what. But anyway, I took a snippet of it and laid that down on my heart. And then decided, well, what am I going to do next? So I had this piece of vintage metal that was part of something. I don't know. I have a bunch of weird vintage metal around. And this one is a reproduction vintage here. Weird silver tube beads that I had floating around. These are vintage vintage glass. Pressed glass with the foil backing so they glow beautifully. I have a friend who gave me those, which was so nice. A bunch of silver little findings here, so that's Bali silver. Other little silver beads. And of course your glass tube beads, which are always my favorite. And then finishing it all up is all of these little glass rhinestones in there. So this is a little piece of polymer clay, similar to what we had going on with that other leaf. And I just cut it so I could insert it in there. I thought that was fun. And then a different friend gave me a couple of odds and ends from their studio, and it had this really interesting piece that was on a bracelet or something, and I just thought, I love that. So I stuck that in the middle. I used like a bigger blob of epoxy clay to stick it right on top of something, and then put some crystals on it so it wouldn't look like a piece of gum under there. And then since it had a hole, an indentation in the center, another blob of epoxy clay with a spacer bead and a glass bead and a little bit of silver ball tipped pin. Kind of really makes that look good, don't you think? And then ties the different blues in together. So anyway, here are all of my wall hearts that I've just been working on here recently, and I kind of thought they turned out really fun and thought you might like to know a little bit about what went on behind the scenes. Okay, so if you like this and you like my artwork, typically you could go to my site and buy artwork, right? I mean, that's normally how it works. Well, for one reason and another, which is a story for a different video, I have a group called my Diamond Club members, and they get first dibs at my artwork. They've been people who have followed me for years, who have bought my stuff, that pay a small monthly fee for the privilege, I guess, of being able to see everything first and getting first crack at it. So I usually have a sale about once a month in that group, and people can claim which ones they want and they get first shot. So that means there's usually hardly anything that makes it out of that group and into my site. So if you are interested in my artwork, obviously you can message me. I don't really do commissions, but you can message me, and I will, of course, answer whatever questions you might have, but I will direct you to that group. It's a lovely little group, and it's a way to get some of my stuff. So the only ones that you can buy on my site is when I do like a limited edition. So I'll make a prototype and then I'll make as many of them as there are orders. Sometimes I do that, but these are all one-of-a-kind stuff. I don't want to have to sit down and try to duplicate something like this. I mean, I couldn't anyway. I mean, where are you going to find another pearl like this, right? And I only have a few of those left. And although this I could do all day long, I don't wanna. So something like that is a one of a kind, and hopefully it will find itself to someone who loves it. So please check out, and I'll put a link in the description as well, my diamond membership in case that amuses you. And it's a Facebook group, so that works through Facebook. Okay, well, here's some stuff. I hope you enjoyed looking at it. And if you are also a creator, I hope some of these combinations and things that I'm doing give you some inspiration to play. I have a lot of videos that deal with using epoxy clay. It's super easy. I'm using a brand called Epoxy Sculpt, made by the Avies Studio, and I love it. It's fantastic. And so I've got other videos if you want a little bit of how-to on that. Okay, there you go.